Metal Jesus, I'm back again to show you some of the games I've picked up and added to my collection over the last couple months. Now, I've been to a couple retro gaming expos and I added actually quite a few games, and so I've had to decide that I'm going to pare this down a little bit. I'm not going to show you everything, but I've tried to pick out some of the highlights, some of the stuff that's maybe a little bit more interesting to me. Hopefully it's interesting to you, and I'd like to show that to you. I have almost 40 games to show you, including the gameplay. And I thought as a fun bonus at the end, I would also show you some of the music, the vinyl that I've added to my collection as well. So if you're into vinyl, there's something for you as well. Let's take a look. Where to start? Boy, I don't know. You know, I'm gonna start with a console that I rarely talk about, even though I have a lot of games for it, but I just haven't been collecting for it recently, and that is the PSP. I picked up a cheap game called Pursuit Force Extreme Justice. Now this is a pretty cool little series on the PSP. I think it only came out on the PSP, where you play a cop. This game plays almost like a really bad Chuck Norris action movie. But the premise is it's part racing game, and then the other part of it is that you're jumping from car to car as you're racing down the freeway, trying to stop bad guys from getting to their location. So, really fun game. Not amazing, but this is the sequel to the original one, and it was cool to add for just a couple dollars. I picked up a Sega Master System game, and that's called Aerial Assault. It's a side-scrolling shoot 'em up. Love me some shoot 'em ups, and I really like adding to my Master System collection whenever I can. And I got this at the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo for cheap, and pretty cool find. I like these kind of games. At a local garage sale really close to my house, I stumbled upon a guy selling a bunch of Dreamcast games, and there was one in there that he was selling for $2 that's pretty hard to find for $2, and that is Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And it's a fighting game. Beautiful, beautiful fighting game. Love these games. And for $2, I was like blown away. So had to buy this. That same garage sale was also selling some Atari stuff, including the Atari Flashback. This is the first Atari Flashback. And this is modeled after the Atari 7800. It's kind of an interesting little console because in addition to 2600 games, it has 7800 games in here. So it's kind of a weird mix of those two consoles, but very cool to own, and it looks neat. Now, speaking of the 2600, I picked up a couple kind of uncommon cartridges, and the first one is Fantastic Voyage. I believe this is based on the movie, and you are I guess it's like a vertical shooter. You're inside of a body, and you're shooting blood cells, like white blood cells. I think there's like little strands of DNA and stuff. It's actually a pretty easy game, but a lot of fun. I also picked up a game that I'd never heard of before called Cross Force, and seems like an interesting little shooter. A lot of shooters on the 2600, so it's cool to own this game, Cross Force. I also picked up a game called Roc'n Rope, and looks like it's manufactured by Konami, or maybe it's developed by Konami and released by Coleco. And at first I didn't know what the hell to do in this game. It's so bizarre. But after a little bit I realized that you can shoot off this rope and you climb across platforms. I don't know if it's based on an arcade game or not. I'd never heard of it before, but seems like it might be uncommon. And then I found a game called Pooyan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Kind of an odd-shaped cartridge, and this is another really weird game. I think this is an arcade game, but when I first fired it up, because I'm not familiar with the arcade version, I had no idea what to do. I still don't know if I exactly figured it out, but it seems like it's a little bit uncommon, so cool to add 2600 games in my collection. Now moving on to the PlayStation 2, I picked up a couple games for that, including a game based on an animated series called Aqua Teen Hunger Force Zombie Ninja Pro-Am. You know, with a title like that, it's just gotta be good, or at least worth $1. So, and I played a little bit of this, and it's pretty funny. I don't know if it's good or not. It's essentially a golf game as far as I can tell, but it looks like it also has maybe racing elements in there. Just really bizarre. I guess it includes a never before seen episode of Aqua Teen Hunger Force. So really, really interesting game. I picked up 2 racing games that kind of go together, and that is Tokyo Xtreme Racer Drift 1 and 2. I don't know much about these games, but I really like drifting games. I'm hoping they're kind of like Ridge Racer, although I tried out the first game and I was having trouble with the controls, so I don't know if I just need to give it more time or what, but if you are a fan of these games, I'd love to know what you think. You know, did I blow my money on this or not? Because they weren't cheap. They were kind of, you know, they're not expensive, but you could tell that they were kind of sought after. So I'm hoping that they're pretty cool. Another racing game that a friend of mine, Mr. Jason Heine, highly recommends for the PlayStation 2, and that is MotorStorm Arctic Edge. He swears by this game, and I fired this up a little bit to capture the video footage. And the graphics look pretty beautiful for a PS2 game. So it'll be interesting to play this. And I guess it only came out on the PlayStation 2 and the PSP. And this game still fetches a little bit of money. I found it for only a couple dollars, but if you try to buy it like a GameStop, it still costs $15, $20. So pretty cool to own that. And then finally on the PlayStation 2, I picked up a survival horror game that not a lot of people know about, and that's called Echo Night Beyond. And as far as I can tell, this is a survival horror game based on the moon, and you're part of a moon colony in the future, and it's got weird ghosts and all sorts of stuff. So this could be pretty cool, pretty unusual. Glad to have that in the collection. Now, speaking of racing games, I went to the Seattle Retro Gaming Expo with the idea of adding a bunch of racing games to my collection, because I'm kind of in a racing game mood. And I bought a ton of N64 games. Now I'm only going to show you 3 of them, but on my Facebook page I posted a photo of all of them. I think I have almost every racing game for the N64, including Top Gear Overdrive. Had not heard of this, and I think it's kind of uncommon. Played it a little bit and seems like the controls are really slippery, so I don't know if this is a well-made game or not, but cool to own it in the collection. I also picked up a game that a lot of people said I should get, and that's called Stunt Racer 64. And anything with the title of Stunt Racer, well, that sounds pretty fun to me. So it'd be cool to give this game a go. It's by Midway. And then a game that most people that saw my Forgotten Racing Games video said you have to have in your collection, and that is Beetle Adventure Racing for the N64. Haven't played this yet, but just based alone on what people have said, it just sounds awesome. So everyone swears by this game, and I'm pretty excited to fire this up real soon. I added one lone Game Boy game to my collection, and it was a recommendation from Gamester81, and he said I should get a copy of Motocross Maniacs. Found a box copy, and I was like, what the hell? It was actually really cheap. So I don't own many box copies of Game Boy games, and so this is kind of unusual for me, but it looks like a mix of maybe Excitebike and what's that game on the Commodore? It was like Kickstarter or something like that. It's kind of a trials-based game. So cool to own that. I also got a GameCube game I found at a Goodwill for just $2, and I think it's kind of hard to find, and that is the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, the 2-game bonus. So this also comes with the Master Quest, and this is kind of neat. So again, I think this goes for anywhere for $20 to $30, and got it fairly cheap. Good deal. Next up is some games for the original Xbox, including a survival horror game, and I think it only came out on the Xbox, and that is Run Like Hell. And I'm not sure what to think about this game. I played it a little bit, and it seems really, really low budget, really cheesy. That can be a good thing, and I just don't know yet, so I'm gonna have to play a little bit more. People on forums, they really like this game, so could be kind of a, you know, so bad it's good. Speaking of so bad it's good, well actually I don't even know if this one's good or not, but I played it more than I probably should, and that is The Guy game. Found this at a garage sale, Now, if this game sounds familiar, it's because it's kind of notorious, and that is it was recalled because this is a game that includes live video footage from, I guess, spring break. And a girl came on the show with a fake ID who was technically underage. And so the game was released with that. They didn't know at the time, found out, she sued, and they were recalled. So this game's kind of hard to find now and can be very expensive. And I literally paid $1 for it at a garage sale. And yeah, it's so bad it's good. I got a recommendation from a buddy of mine to get Serious Sam 1 and 2 on the original Xbox. These are first-person shooters, and they're fairly notorious for being over the top, all about killing, you know, constant action, lots of enemies on the screen. So I was pretty excited to get these because I think these will be a lot of fun. If you've watched my YouTube channel before, you may have seen a video series on there called I Hate You. And the premise is that we pick usually notoriously bad games to play against our friends and try not to be the biggest loser on there. A game that I've been threatening to play on there for quite a while is now in my collection. It was donated to me by a fan of the channel because I would not have bought this game on its own because it's actually kind of expensive. I don't know why. It can't possibly be good. But in case you're wondering, Drunken Master Paul does not watch these videos, so he'll have no idea, but you will. And that is the Xbox version of Barbie's Horse Adventure, Wild Horse Rescue. I cannot for the life of me figure out why this game goes for so much, but thankfully I did not have to buy it, and it was donated to me by a friend, Corey. Corey, thank you. I can't wait to play this on an episode of I Hate You. I also added a couple Sega Genesis games, including Vapor Trail. Cool to own this game. Haven't played it much, but anytime you shoot stuff on the Genesis, it's a good day. Also found a copy of Combat Cars. I did not know anything about this, but with a name like Combat Cars, that's right up my alley as well. Played it a little bit. It's a top-down racing game, but it encourages you bashing into each other. And that's a good time right there. And then finally on the Genesis, I picked up a copy of Galaxy Force 2. This is kind of an interesting arcade shooter. It's different because you are actually behind your ship. So it almost reminds me of, I don't know, maybe like Wing Commander or something like that. Pretty advanced for the Sega Genesis, but yeah, a lot of fun. I don't know if it's any good or not. It seems like it's a little hard. It seems like it's a little hard to control, but maybe I can get used to it. On the original Nintendo, I picked up a couple games, including Wizardry, Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord. I think this is the only Wizardry game that I own. I don't have any of the PC versions, so kind of cool to add this to the collection. Had no idea this was on the Nintendo. Have to play that later. And then Gamester81 donated a game to me, Mag Max. Him and Jason have been arguing about whether this is a good game or not, so I think I'm supposed to be the deciding factor there, so I'll have to give it a shot. I suspect it's bad, but we'll have to see. This next game, a lot of people recommended I get, and that is called Vice Project Doom, with quite possibly one of the worst covers I've ever seen on a box. So bad. But the game is surprisingly good. You do a bunch of different things in this game. It's very cinematic. You drive down the freeway, almost like Spy Hunter, shooting dudes. Then it goes to a platforming element, and yeah, hard as hell. I die a lot in this game, but very cool. I can see why a lot of people like this game. And then finally, I picked up the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Pool of Radiance, and this is complete. I used to have the PC version of this, but the NES version is always cool to get, and the box is actually in pretty good condition, so cool to have that. I added a new system to my collection over the last couple months, one I never owned as a kid, and it was given to me, it was donated by a guy I used to work with at Sierra. He had kept all his Commodore stuff all these years, and it was time for him to kind of clear out some of the space in his house, and so he donated to me a complete, in the box, still working, Commodore 128. And this is a really cool computer. It's really heavy. way bigger than I ever thought it was going to be. He also included the hard drive, he included a printer, he included a monitor, and tons and tons of games and software. So Mark, thank you very much for donating this. This is really cool to own. The great thing about the 128 is that it also plays most Commodore 64 games. So you're essentially getting 2 for 1 with this computer. So that's a win. Now I did want to highlight one Commodore 64 game that he gave me, complete in the box. It's something you don't see every day, and that is a 3D flight simulator called Echelon. This is in perfect condition, has all the stuff inside, but what's really cool about this, and which I haven't seen this in a long time, it comes with the lipstick. This is a headset that plugs into the Commodore that allows you to, I guess, do voice activation within the game. So I've never used it before. I remember this on shelves and thinking it was so cool. It was so advanced for the time. You'd be able to do voice commands in the game. So really cool to own this. I hadn't seen it in probably 20 years. So again, thanks, Mark. Now I'd like to show you some PC games I picked up recently, including a game that is getting hard to find and is going up in price, and it's not really that old. And that is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. This game came out in 2004, but it didn't sell very well. The reason why it's going up in price, though, is because it's fantastic. It's a role-playing game, and it's by the makers of, well, they started off making the original Fallout, and then they went on, and I think they made Arcanum and a couple other ones. Anyways, this game is really cool. It's based on the Source engine, so it has the same engine that it powers Half-Life 2. Tons of choice in this game. This is a fantastic game. I can't believe I finally got it. I believe it's on Steam. I highly recommend it, but I'm going to do a review on this game because it's really awesome. Now, going back a few years, I found a box copy of a game that, oh man, I remember this as a kid. Strike Commander. This is a Chris Roberts game. Now, if that sounds familiar, it's because he's the guy who made Wing Commander and the Privateer games. This game was so advanced when it came out that I didn't know anybody who had a PC that would run it. It was total bleeding edge technology. And it's cool to own a copy of this. A lot of people describe this game as Privateer on Earth. And it takes place in the future of 2011. Here's a game I haven't played before. Pretty cool to find a copy of this, and unfortunately I'm not going to play it anytime soon because it is sealed, and that is the notoriously bad John Romero's Daikatana. I was shocked when I found an unopened copy of this game. So cool. I love to play it. This is the game where John Romero declared people that he was going to make them his bitch. So cool to have this in the collection. John, Mr. Gamester81, kindly donated a game to me out of his personal collection. He thought I might enjoy it, and that is called Rex Nebular and the Cosmic Gender Bender. He knows I'm a fan of silly adventure games, kind of like Space Quest or Leisure Suit Larry, and I get the feeling this is probably a mix of both of those kind of games. I haven't played much of it. All I know is that Rex crash lands on a planet full of women, and hilarity ensues, so I have no idea. But it's pretty cool to own this game. I never played it before. Now, speaking of silly games, here is a Sierra classic, Space Quest 4, Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers. Beautiful condition box. I'm so excited to have this. I used to have it back in the day, but for whatever reason I lost it, so it's cool to have it back in the collection. What's neat about this is it also comes with the hint guide. If you remember, back then Sierra had hint guides that had this red print on it, and you had to have this little decoder, I guess a piece of cardboard that you would run down there and only expose the hints that you wanted to read at the time. Pretty cool to own. Beautiful game and really funny. So glad to have this classic Sierra game. I found these two games and had to pick them up. These are the SSI Gold Box editions of Pools of Darkness and The Dark Queen of Krynn. And they're both in great condition. These are for the Macintosh, actually. You know, there's something about these games that I just absolutely love, and I think there's 7 or 8 in the series, and so I'm probably going to try to go for a complete collection. You know, as I find them, I'm going to add them to my collection. I love these as a kid, and it's cool to collect them now. For those that don't know, they're based on the Forgotten Realms, and they're total hardcore D&D games. And then finally for the PC, I found a copy of The Lost Treasures of Infocom. This is a really cool collection. This is actually the second one, so now I have 1 and 2. And it has Cutthroats, what else? A Mind Forever Voyaging, Trinity, Wishbringer, Sea Stalker, a bunch of stuff. The great thing about these collections is that they reproduce a lot of the extra stuff that they would put in the original boxes. So the maps, there's newspapers, there was comics, all that stuff is reproduced for these collections. And collection 1 and 2 is actually getting hard to find and going up in price. So I have both now, and that's pretty cool. I think I have basically every Infocom text adventure ever made. So for an old school gaming fan like me, that's a pretty awesome find. All right, and then finally I wanted to show you some of the music I've added to my collection. And my wife and I plan to do a retrospective on 80s hair metal. This is the stuff that, you know, used to make fun of back in the day. The big perms, the spandex, the wheelie guitars, that sort of stuff. We're gonna do a total love letter to that. And we've been on the lookout for some of those albums because we love showing albums. We love collecting them. I have hundreds. And I found a copy of Twisted Sister's Stay Hungry. Ah, what a classic. We're Not Gonna Take It's on here. I Wanna Rock. So much good stuff. That's a great album. I found a copy of the British version of a Whitesnake album called Trouble. This is a really good album. It has Take Me With You. That's a great song. It has another song in here called Lie Down. They do a really cool version of the Beatles' Day Tripper. So, hadn't seen this album before, and cool to have this in my collection. I also added an album by a band who's kind of not well respected, especially in the 80s. They got accused of being a sort of Led Zeppelin ripoff. But I think they're better than that, and I've actually come to appreciate them quite a bit. And that's a band called Kingdom Come. This is, I believe, their second album. It's called In Your Face. And again, it's way better than they were given the credit back in the day. I really liked their first album, and this one's not bad either. The first side of this album is actually pretty decent. So if you like hair metal and that glam rock from the 80s, this is a pretty cool one. And then finally, I found this one. This is I think this is just an EP from Dave Lee Roth off the Yankee Rose album. Has Yankee Rose, Shy Boy, Easy Street. And this is the band that had one of my favorite guitarists of all time, Steve Vai. So we're gonna be covering this stuff in that upcoming music video. So that's a quick look at some of the video games and music I've added to my collection over the last couple months. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I wanna thank you for watching my channel and thank you for subscribing. Take care.